Okay, good afternoon. Thank you for all joining us for my portion of the Fall Sports Parent Meeting. This is definitely a little different than our normal format, but what I'm going to address is kind of information that applies to all of our student athletes. And then next week, once we know who is on rosters, individual sports teams will set up their individual Zoom meetings or send out information to parents that way with sports specific information. So I'm going to go ahead and go through a little PowerPoint with some information that applies to everybody, just so we're all on the same page as we get things started. And then from there, I will stop sharing my screen so you can actually see me, and we will kind of do question answers to answer anything that you need. So obviously, let's see, get my screen shared. Obviously, we're here for students to be students first instead of athletes. So we will take academics very seriously. Students must be enrolled in 5 new classes this semester. Going forward, they will need to pass 5 classes this fall in order to be eligible to play a sport next spring. And students that are enrolled in the USD 348 remote learning option will be eligible to compete this fall. We have had our online or remote instruction platform approved by the Kansas State High School Activities Association, so there's no issue there. And the other big change on academic eligibility is with the pandemic last spring. Typically, students would have had to pass 5 classes in the spring to be eligible this fall, but the Activities Association has left that up to individual school districts for this semester only, and our Board of Education did approve us to waive that. So even if your son or daughter only passed 4 classes last spring, they are eligible this fall. Obviously, if you're a new student or your student is new, you transferred into the district, transfer rules still will apply, but as long as you were eligible in your last district, we will go from there. So just a little bit of an academic eligibility change for our returning students. To continue the academic eligibility at the high school, we do not have a weekly eligibility policy, but we do allow our coaches to go above and beyond our normal the CASHA policy. So if your son or daughter comes home and says, hey, I didn't get to practice today because coach made me go to tutoring, or I spent the first 30 minutes on the sideline doing homework, please applaud that coach. They are taking academics seriously, and that does need to be our first priority. At the junior high, we do have a weekly eligibility policy that goes into effect after the 10th day of the semester. So student athletes will get a little bit of extra grace period this year. What that entails, teachers will fill out a document with any student that is receiving a failing grade. The first time they are on that list, it is a warning week. There's no penalty. They're still allowed to practice. They're still allowed to compete. It's just a warning week. Hey, get your grades up, or there could be future consequences. The second time you are on that list with an F, it does not necessarily need to be consecutive weeks, or it doesn't even have to be the same class. But the second time during your season, your son or daughter is on that list, they will not be allowed to practice or compete. We want them to focus on grades that week, get their grades up. And then in the rare case that your son or daughter happens to be on that list for the 3rd time during a season, they would be removed from the team at that point. We usually do not have big issues with it, but it is above and beyond that CASHA policy. You just want to make sure you're aware of that. That process does start over with the start of a new sports season. So if you were on the F list during football season, but now it's wrestling season, you do start with a clean slate. And teachers are to upgrade that list by 4 o'clock on Friday. Once you are on that list, you are on that list for the week. Just because I turned in a bunch of homework Monday morning and my grade's now up to a C, you were on the list at 4 o'clock Friday, you're still on the list for that week. So just kind of, like I said, wanted to go through the junior high weekly eligibility policy, just so we're all on the same page, and because it is different than the state's policy. Attendance, it goes hand in hand with grades. We expect students to be in class all day, every day. If you miss an hour and it's unexcused on a practice day, there's school consequences, but as far as practice, we do let students participate. If it's on a game day, we're a little stricter. If you're at a doctor or dental type appointment, legal appointment, something like that, bring us a written documentation. Hey, he was here at an appointment. We don't need to know what he was seen for. But if we get something like that, no questions asked, they are allowed to play. Sometimes planned events, administrators, will waive that requirement. Could be a college visit day for a high school junior or senior. I've got a college class, something like that. If it's planned, you've got a planned event coming up, let the administration know, either myself or one of the principals, and we will make a determination whether or not we're going to allow them to compete that day. And emergencies. You wake up, I got a flat tire on the way to school, take care of that. Let us know as soon as you can. We will handle those cases on an individual basis. But overall, day in, day out, we want our kids in class. Some paperwork. I know a lot of people have already turned these forms in. All 3 of these forms need to be turned in before your son or daughter will be allowed to practice. Pre-participation physical exam, that has to be dated after May 1st of 2020. That is the state required date. Treatment release form, that one does need to be notarized. We will actually Xerox that and send a copy with all of our coaches. It allows us to provide medical treatment until we can get a hold of you if needed. It also, ambulance crews, ERs, whatever the case may be. That is why it has to be notarized. But we will send that with our coaches. And the head injury information sheet is new 3 or 4 years ago based on the state law. That just needs to be read through and signed by the parent or a parent or guardian and the student. User fees. Our school district does charge a user fee per sport. It is $50. If you qualify for free or reduced lunch, we reduce that amount. If you qualify for reduced lunch price, it is $30. If you qualify for the free lunch program, it is $10 per sport. Fees will be assessed after rosters are submitted by our coaches. So probably by the middle of next week, we will start sending out notifications that you can go into RevTrack and pay for it like you do your enrollment. Or you can always send cash or check or bring it to the school and pay that way. Now that I mentioned enrollment, just a shameless plug for the district, we would like everyone to be enrolled by tomorrow. So if you have not already done so, little friendly reminder, take care of your enrollment obligations. Sports medicine coverage is provided at the school district, to the school district at no cost by LMH Health and Ortho Kansas. That is the other half of my job. I'm also our district's athletic trainer, so you'll see me on sidelines. If your son or daughter happens to be injured, I will be communicating with you about that situation as well. Post-injury clearance, if your son or daughter would have a concussion, one of the parts of that concussion law that came out a few years ago is obviously we need written clearance by a healthcare provider. The way the law is written, that must be either an MD or a DO. So if you go see a chiropractor for your typical family medical care, that is fine, but they cannot clear a student athlete after a concussion. Neither can a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant. So it does have to be an MD or a DO. Just want to make you aware of that. And obviously in the case of a concussion situation, I'll remind you of that at that time. And lastly on this slide, I try not to change practice schedules any more than I have to. But if it is bad weather, lightning obviously is a spur of the moment thing. If we're going to heat and humidity, if it is too hot, too humid, we're in excessive heat warnings, we will adjust practices. That could be moving practices later. It could just be, hey, we're not going to have equipment on today. It could be, we're going to shorten it. There are several things that we can do to adjust practice times for heat and humidity. But if that is the case, please bear in mind we are doing that out of safety for our student athletes as well as our coaching staff. I don't want to make it an inconvenience for parents any more than we have to, but it may need to be done in rare situations. The hot topic right now, obviously, COVID-19 concerns. Me to give you some basic guidelines. First and foremost, please do not send your son or daughter to practice if they don't feel well. Just don't do it. It's going to solve a lot of problems. Daily temperature checks and symptom screens, that will take place as part of every practice, game, competition, home or away. I know once we start classes, students will be screened as they come into the building in the morning. That is just going to be a temperature check at this point. If we have practice at 3:30, your son or daughter will get to have their temperature taken again, as well as we will ask questions based on symptoms. It will be nothing horribly invasive. It's just going to be a little more time consuming. It's going to be the same procedure we did for summer conditioning. They will be asked about cough, fever, sore throat, shortness of breath, loss of taste or smell, and then have their temperature taken again. We are going to ask all student athletes to provide their own water bottle. Team packs of water bottles will not be issued to teams this year. On the sideline of game days, we will probably have cups more than we have, but every student should provide their own water bottle. If it is you're an outdoor athlete, I would suggest the bigger water bottle, the better. Get a gallon jug, thermos, something like that, just so you don't have to refill it as often. We will have the ability to refill those during practice, but please come with your own water bottle. Student athletes will be asked to wear a mask when not actively participating in their event or practice. So you're in the locker room, you're going to wear a mask. You're standing in line to get your temperature taken, you're in a mask. If you're in a sport practice and we're kind of clustered up and the coaches are speaking and giving instruction, if we can't ensure social distancing, we're going to ask them to put their mask back on. So daily, bring a mask and wear it. Another basic, just good hygiene practices. We will have student athletes wash their hands when showing up for practices. We will take breaks in the middle of practices and probably have hand sanitizer available at that break. Laundry, wash your uniforms and practice gear, preferably daily. We're going to harp on that a lot. Don't put your stuff in the locker room and let it sit. Locker rooms will obviously be sanitized every day, but take your own personal gear home and wash it. Don't share personal equipment and social distance when possible. Those are, like I said, just kind of basic guidelines we will follow. More information. Right now, the Douglas County Health Department has not released their guidelines. We've seen a draft, but we have not seen a final copy of that, so things may change as what we plan to do. League considerations. I'm going to warn you, we may change schedules next week proactively before the season starts, but there are going to be different last minute changes throughout the seasons. Between the junior high and high school leagues, we currently have schools in 6 different counties. Each one of those counties has their own set of health and safety guidelines. So just because Baldwin is doing something in Douglas County doesn't mean Ottawa will in Franklin County, or Lewisburg and Paola have the same guidelines in Miami County. So please bear with us on that. It will be a very fluid situation this year. Potential changes to look for in addition to scheduling. There are going to be some different changes with gate procedures. Right now we are planning to have limited fans in the stands. As ADs from the league, we do not know exactly what that's going to look like, but we've kind of discussed some potential scenarios. But once again, like I said, I have not seen Douglas County's final guidelines. I know many other schools are in the same way with their counties. So there will be changes to the typical fan situation. It's not going to look the same. We are looking at various options of filming games and being able to post them for parents and other fans to watch. Some of those may be able to be live streamed. Some of those may be posted at a later time after the game's over. But once again, those plans are in the works. Potential schedule changes I've addressed. They are going to happen. I've actually got a couple emails this morning that schools are not going to be able to compete in various competitions. So we have not done a lot of those kind of changes yet, just once again, because we're waiting on more guidance from our local county health departments. But be braced for that. That is why we did not print those little purple and white schedule cards. We know those are going to be obsolete. So we saved Baldwin State Bank some advertising money. Didn't want to send those out and then have everything change before we get started. And then the last thing I wanted to address on COVID, the High School Activity Association has released sport-specific guidelines and activity-specific guidelines that we will follow. Some of those things you may not even notice during the course of the game. Maybe, one of them is as simple as using hand sanitizer as you go on and off the volleyball court. Other things you may actually notice as far as how sidelines are structured to help keep kids and coaches spread out. But we will go through those guidelines per event as we need to. First day of practice, I'm not going to read through this specifically, but ask you to kind of take note of when your son or daughter's first practice will be. August 17th, which is next Monday, is the first day the Activity Association is allowing us to practice. Times are posted on what information we have, and if you don't get this jotted down, we will send out the link where you can watch this video, again, and I will put that information in the email I send out here later today. And also, along with first day and practice time is contact information for our head coaches, also listed. So once again, this will be on the link available to watch and included in a later email. And like I said at the very beginning, individual sport team meetings will be scheduled by coaches next week, and most of those will take place via Zoom. But we will not break into the individual sport-specific meetings at this time. So that's how that will work. And that is the end of my PowerPoint. So I'm going to turn off screen sharing and we'll kind of get into some question and answers. That should have gotten rid of my PowerPoint. Jana, did that change to my screen? Okay. When You were allowed, when you pre-registered for this meeting, we did ask for, if you had any questions, you could list them with your pre-registration. I will go through the questions that were asked there. But if you have other questions, feel free to put them into the chat. And Jana Craig Hare is our curriculum director. She's kind of helping me monitor the chat line so we can make sure we get any questions answered. The first question that was asked is, will fans be allowed in the stands? That is one of the $100 questions. Right now, we are planning to have some fans in the stands. Like I kind of addressed, we're not 100% certain what that will look like, but it is our goal. Obviously, masks will be required, social distancing will be required. As far as how many fans we allow into the stands, that we do not have that answer yet. And to be 100% honest, that may depend on where the competition is. And if it's for instance, if it's a volleyball game, how many kids are participating? What's the seating capacity of the gym? How can we keep fans spaced out? All those things will be taken into consideration before we know exactly what we're going to do. And please be aware that may be different venue to venue. Go back to volleyball, for instance, Spring Hill High School's gym, if you've been in there, it is enormous. It seats about 3,000 people, which is about twice as many as we can host on a on a regular night. That's twice our capacity. So we may be able to allow more students or fans in general into an event at their facility. Second question was asked about the multi-purpose room. How do I put this? It will potentially be used as a junior high lunchroom. How that impacts athletics and activities is we use the multi-purpose room for cheerleading practice, wrestling practice, sometimes PE classes. It is obviously by its name, it's a very multi-use facility. But this question specifically was cheer. We are working on that. We do not know exactly what the lunch situation will be. It depends on how many students choose in-person enrollment versus remote. But if that space is needed to be used for lunchroom, we may move cheer practices somewhere else where we can put up wrestling mats. It may just mean we're going to have to fold up a lunch table and slide it out of the way and roll down a mat. So we will make sure that cheer has a safe place to practice, but we are working through that, and some of that will depend on enrollment numbers. Another question was, how will cross-country meet cross-country meets change? That will change dependent on venue to venue as more schools get their local county guidelines. Things that have been discussed, we will probably work to limit numbers at our meet, obviously. Things we have discussed, moving JV and varsity to different days, limiting number of entries. Do we do varsity in the morning, JV in the afternoon? I'm not 100% sure how those will look in its entirety, but starting shoots will be spaced out. Finish line procedures, I think more schools you'll see go to the chip timing, like what we use at our home meet, so we don't have to pull bib numbers and things like that. But some of those changes will be dependent on the host school and how they can set up their venue. And then the last question we had was, is there an official sign-up date, and how do you turn paperwork in? There is not an official sign-up date. Please communicate with your coaches about your son or daughter wanting to participate, or simply just show up to that first day of practice. If you would like to turn paperwork in early, I would highly encourage that. Between 8 and 3, Monday through Friday this week, there is a box in the little breezeway at the high school that's, and there's a door labeled. That door will be unlocked from 8 to 3. You can send your kid in with them, or a parent can just swing by. You just walk in, open that door, put your forms in the box, and then we're about every half hour or so we go get forms out of there and process them. And the more paperwork that gets turned in advance, the easier the first day of practice is. But by no means is it wrong to hand it in on the first day of practice. If you are going to do that, please make sure everything is signed. The physical form this year has extra signature lines. If you turn in something with your son or daughter turns something in Monday morning practice that is not fully signed, they will not be allowed to practice. We will, hey, call mom or dad, see if they can come up and sign it. If it's a student that's legally aged to drive, take it home, get it signed, and bring it back. But if we're missing a signature, that student will not be allowed to compete or practice. So by all means, turn it in if you can. But if not, it's not wrong to bring it the first day of practice. Just please make sure everything is signed. So those are the only questions we had in advance. I'm looking through the chat. I do not see anything posted right now to me. Let's see, Kelly Bethel Smith in the chat line to everybody. You can purchase Bulldog Spirit Wear masks from the BHS Booster Club. And it looks like, okay, the link has been posted in the chat. That is a great way to get Bulldog Spirit Wear and support our booster club. They do a lot of things for all of our programs, so that would be a great way to get a Bulldog themed mask. We have looked at potentially purchasing some masks for our student athletes. We have not done that at this point. We are kind of looking at CASHA guidelines as far as what is allowed to wear during a game, specifically football. There's been brought up if we get the little net gaiter type that you can pull up and pull down. Those would be great from a standpoint of I didn't have to put my mask or hand it to somebody or throw it on a bench and it falls off. But there are some safety concerns with football as far as those being grabbed and being an increased injury risk. We are waiting on extra guidance from the Activities Association and have not seen that yet at this point. It looks like I do not see anything else in the chat. Jana, have you seen anything you couldn't answer?
Nope, I think we're good.
Okay. So, if nobody else has any questions, we'll kind of wrap this up pretty quick. If you do have a question, feel free to email me. Email your coach, we're an open book. And I apologize for not being able to give you more answers on some of the questions, but it is such a fluid situation that things are changing day to day, sometimes hour to hour. And we are still waiting on guidance, especially from the Douglas County Health Department. So, like I said, I'm frustrated by this as much as most people. I wish I had all the answers, and I just don't. But as we find those out, we will pass information on to you and try to keep you, as up to date as humanly possible. So thank you all for taking part of your lunch hour and attending the meeting. And once again, watch for an email later this afternoon with Q&A answers as well as a link to this video. So thanks everybody, and we're looking forward to a good fall sports season. Thank you.